Hey, allesammans, välkommen tillbaka till my channel. That was a weird intro. Today I wanted to do a video on Freyja and Frigg, because this was a question that was asked to me before by somebody about the differences between Freyja and Frigg, and with the new Assassin's Creed Valhalla game out, I know there's going to be some discourse over where's Frigg, and who's Freyja, and why is Freyja the Queen of Asgard, and I've heard similar things when God of War came out about how Freyja was depicted in that as also being Frigg. And there are a lot of people who take them to be the same person, or for Frigg to be a different name for Freyja. It really just depends on who you are. There are people who think that, and there are people who think that there are two different deities. So today I wanted to take a look at both of them as they appear in relation to the lore and in different stories that they are presented in, so that you can draw your own conclusions about who both of these goddesses are. And yeah, so let's get started. Okay, so first off we have Frigg, or as some people know her, Frigga. She is a goddess of fertility, motherhood, and the household. Some people think that Friday may be derived from her name, and others believe that Friday is derived from either Freya or Freyr. Freyja and Frigg have a lot of connections, and a lot of discourse, such as whose name means Friday, or where did Friday come from? And that's just one of the many little things that we're not sure on. Now, Frigg is most notably known as Odin's wife, although her exact standing in the lore is not exactly highlighted very well, and it is still highly debated. She is openly discussed in a couple of primary sources, although her overall personality and overarching characteristics are very obscure. However, there are some very notable things that we do know about her. For instance, many associate her with fertility, love, wisdom, prophecy, as well as the household. She can be seen as a very maternal goddess, one that is strongly connected with family, motherhood, and the home. However, it's also said that she is very gifted in Seidr, which is a trait that Freyja also shares, Freyja being noted as the one to actually bring Seidr to the Aesir. This is another similarity that leads many to believe that they are in fact one in the same, or that they were one in the same years ago, only to have evolved eventually into two separate beings. Going back to Frigg, as the wife of Odin, she held a very high seat among the Aesir, and depictions of her from the 19th and 20th centuries usually depict her upon a throne or in an otherwise commanding position. Frigg resides in Fensalir, a hall that is said to be located in a marshland type of area. Here she has in her possession an ashen box called Eski, which her handmaiden Fula carries for her. The contents of Eski are unknown, and if they ever were known in the past, we have since lost that information. Thanks, Christians! Frigg's father is believed to have been Fjogin, and she herself is the mother of Baldur, Hermod, and Hodr, with Odin. In the story that she is mentioned in, her maternal presence is highlighted, especially in the case of the Grimnismal. In the Grimnismal, we meet two young boys, Agnar and Geirrod, who were said to be the sons of Hrothung, a great king of the time. While out fishing, the boys were beset upon by a great storm, which dashed their vessel, and when they finally washed ashore, they were found by a peasant farmer and his wife. The man took to fostering Geirrod, while his wife took Agnar in. Eventually, Geirrod returned to his father's kingdom to learn that his father had died, and the people were now proclaiming him to be the king who had returned to them. Meanwhile, in Hlithshoth, Odin's throne room, in which all the realms could be observed simultaneously or at whim, Odin and Frigg were watching the boys. Here it is revealed that the present farmer and his wife were in fact Odin and Frigg. Odin goes about boasting about Geirrod, whom he had fostered, while also speaking ill against Agnar. Now, Frigg wasn't too happy about this because she was the one who fostered Agnar, especially, and she wasn't going to have her foster son talked ill about by her husband. So in turn, she took to criticizing Geirrod, saying that he was a miserly king and he was responsible for torturing many of his own guests in his hall. With neither Odin nor Frigg willing to back down, they began a wager. Odin would go to Geirrod's court in disguise and see the treatment he was given, and then they could discern the truth of the matter. Well, Frigg was determined to win, so she sent a messenger to Geirroth telling him that a sorcerer would be coming to his hall to bewitch him. Sure enough, when Odin arrived, he stated only that his name was Grimnir, and Geirroth, afraid that he was the sorcerer forewarned about, promptly set him between two great fires for 8 nights. This torture was meant to get him to speak about his true intentions. Eventually, Geirroth's younger son brings Grimnir a hall of ale. Why do I keep saying hall? Eventually, Geirroth's youngest son brings Grimnir a horn of ale, and it is the story he tells while sipping this ale that it comprises the core of the Grimnismal, and Frigg is never mentioned again. Although we don't get to hear about the end of the wager, it's obvious that Frigg, in fact, won, and that she is capable of outsmarting her husband. This shows that not only can she outwit the Allfather to an extent, but also that she is willing to go to great lengths to protect her children, even those she had fostered. This fierce maternal protectiveness is something that helps connect her with motherhood and protection of the family. Another of the most well-known stories that Frigg features in is the Death of Baldur. The story begins with both Baldur and Frigg having the same dream of his death. When this is relayed to Odin, he then rides Sleipnir down to Hell to find a vulva capable of deciphering the dreams. He eventually finds one and resurrects her, likely the same one we meet in the Voluspa, and she confirms that Baldur is to die. So, determined to thwart this prophecy, Frigg sends messengers to all corners of creation to elicit promises that nothing would harm her son. All things living and inert pledged harmlessness, although the mistletoe was ignored as it was deemed harmless already. At least until Loki got his hands on it. With Baldur all but invulnerable, the gods celebrated by hurling all manner of projectiles and weapons at him, as you do in the case of invulnerability. However, Loki was not content to simply sit back and chuck rocks at him. Instead, he disguised himself as an old lady and ventured to Frigg's hall. Here, through carefully crafted speech, he learned the secret of the mistletoe and set out crafting a spear from it. When he returns to the hall, he goes to the blind god Hoder, who wasn't taking part in the throwing festivities due to his lack of sight. Loki hands him the spear and guides his aim, telling him that he should at least throw something in celebration of his brother's invulnerability. Hoder throws the spear and it pierces Baldur, and he falls dead. Overcome by grief, Frigg asks for a volunteer to ride to Hell and beg for her son's release. Hermod, her other son, agrees to go and plead the case. However, once he arrives in Hell, Hell tells him that she will release Baldur, but only if everything in creation weeps for him. Upon hearing this, the Aesir sent out messengers across the realms, and all things wept for the demise of Baldur. All but one, Thruk, an old giantess who many believe to be Loki in disguise once again. She said, "Thruk will weep waterless tears for Baldur's balefare. Living or dead, I love not the churl's son, let Hell hold to that she hath." In both of these stories, we see Frigg is concerned with her children, both blood-related and fostered. This further emphasizes her connection to the importance of family, and shows that as a goddess she might have been chiefly concerned with maternal matters. Going on to Freyja. Freyja is said to be one of the loveliest, if not the most beautiful of the goddesses. Connected with love, lust, fertility, and to an extent war, Freyja is a member of the Vanir tribe of gods, and is gifted highly in the art of Seidr magic. In fact, it was said that she was the one who gave Seidr to the gods of Asgard. Unlike Thor, who achieves gains by force, or Loki through tricks, Freyja is shown to use subtler methods, such as gift-giving, beauty, or sex to get what she wants. Although usually agreeable and helpful, she is also known as a ferocious warrior, and it is she who claims half of all those slain in battle. Freyja resides in Sessrumnir, a hall on the field of Folkvanger. In the Grimnismal it is stated, "The ninth is Folkvanger, where Freyja decrees who shall have seats in the hall. The half of the dead each day does she choose, and half does Odin have." Freyja is also known for her many adornments, such as her falcon cloak, which allows the wearer the gift of flight. This cloak is often loaned out, most notably to Loki during his rescue of Idun, whom he was responsible for having gotten kidnapped in the first place. She also has a necklace called Brisingamen, which was crafted by the dwarves and is carefully guarded by Freyja, although it was once loaned to Thor when he dresses her in order to get his hammer back. And Loki did successfully steal it once, although it was Heimdall who bested him in the form of a seal and returned it to Freyja. In the Sorla Fatr, a 14th century narrative written by Christian priests, so obviously it's not very canonical, it was a short narrative from the extended version of Olaf Tryggvason's saga. We have the story of how Freyja came to own Brisingamen. And in this story, it described Freyja as a concubine of Odin, who stumbled upon a cave where dwarves were working on a necklace. Desiring it, she asked the dwarves if she could have it, and they told her she could, but only if she slept with each one of them, to which end she agreed. In the story, it is Odin who requests that Loki steal the necklace, after Loki informed him of how Freyja acquired it. This story also has parallels to other stories, such as the Loki, in which Loki snitches on all the gods' bad behaviors, particularly Gefjun saying she slept with a man for a necklace. It also has a similarity to the Hustrapa poem, in which Loki steals the necklace and is later bested by Heimdall as a seal, which I tend to believe is more accurate because Loki. He doesn't need Odin to tell him to go steal a necklace. Because of this, it seems to be harkening back to elements of older poems, but in this, as opposed to Heimdall getting the necklace back, it's Odin that tells Freyja she must start an endless war until a true Christian, aka Olaf Tryggvason, came and put an end to the war. Essentially, the Solothottir was a smear story against the Norse religion, and while there very well may have been a story about Freyja sleeping with dwarves that has been lost, the gods certainly weren't vying for a Christian king. Here's looking at you, Olaf! Additionally, Freyja is said to ride in a glittering chariot pulled by 2 domestic cats, which has led many to associate her with cats of any kind. However, lesser known is her familiar Hildisvini, a boar, which could have been a similarity to her brother, Freyr, who also has a boar, Gullinbursti, who was crafted by the dwarves during the Sifnid's new hair fiasco. In terms of parentage, Freyja is said to be the sister of Freyr, and the daughter of Njord. Her mother is sometimes thought to have been Nerthus, an old Germanic goddess associated with peace and plenty. However, Snorri states that both Freyja and Freyr were children of Njord and his sister. He writes, while Njord, with the Vanaland people, he had taken his own sister in marriage, for that was allowed by their law, and their children were Freyr and Freyja. And Loki seems to suggest something similar in the Loki. Give heed now, Njord, nor boast too high, no longer I hold it hid. With thy sister hadst thou so far a son, thus hast thou no worse a hope. So Loki in the Loki seems to suggest that he also had kids with his sister, although in here it's not necessarily stated to be Freyja or Freyr. However, Gafning contradicts this by saying, Njord has a wife, the woman called Skavi, daughter of Thiazi the giant. Njord begot afterward 2 children. The son was called Freyr and the daughter Freyja. They were fair of face and mighty. So really, it's up in the air, and it could be due to the difference in practices between tribes during the time that each of these stories was true for a different region, and the stories have just kind of been slammed together through multiple retellings. Freyja is read to... Red? Red. Is read to. Those are words you said. Freyja is read... Loki. Stop. Freyja is wed to Other, a mysterious god that we don't know too much about. He is said to have always been away on long journeys, and during these periods of absence, Freyja weeps golden tears for him. Freyja also has 2 daughters named Nos and Gersemi. Some scholars debate whether they were one person or 2. That seems to be an overarching theme in this video. Similarly, it's this connection between names that is another reason why many scholars believe that both Frigg and Freyja are either the same being or were at one time. Due to various cultural differences, it's very likely that we don't have records of differences between Germanic and Scandinavian tribes. Since the Poetic Edda acts as a transposition of various beliefs into one, it's almost certain that many details and minutiae were lost to history. Because if you take one myth from one region, and then you're trying to substitute part of it, or if part of it is lost and you try to substitute it with a part from another region that might have been saved, you're getting 2 stories that were never meant to really be put together. They might stem from the same source material, as in they both mention Freyja or Frigg, but these 2 tribes could have been believing 2 very different things. Oh my gosh. Loki is taking over this video, I swear to God. Loki's like, why haven't you done a video on me yet? I kind of did a video on you. I mean, okay, next video is barely gonna be about Loki. We just need to get through this one, okay? Okay, so getting back on track, going back to the similarity between names and in their magical practices, i.e. both Freyja and Frigg practicing Seidr. The names of their husbands are also quite similar. For instance, Odin and Odr. We know that Odr wasn't simply an invention of Snorri's due to him being mentioned in an 11th century poem by Einar Skulason. This makes it possible for him to have been a late feature of pre-Christian Norse. That said, there is speculation that Odr was essentially a distinct counterpart to Odin, and this is more evident when you break down the name. Odin is essentially Odr, but with the masculine definite article I-N-N attached to it. This means that the names are nearly identical, and given that the Allfather has a long list of aliases, it isn't a really big stretch to believe that this could have been another name of his that he once used, and it was later turned into the name of his separate deity. And also, there are some people who believe that maybe Tyr and Odin were once the same deity, or that Tyr was once essentially the head of the gods, and then later on it evolved to Odin being the head of the pantheon. There's a lot of stuff we don't know! As far as worship today goes, I would argue that the gods have many names, and if you wanted to make offerings to both Frigg and Freyja for different reasons, that would be absolutely acceptable. Really, there is both evidence for and against them both being the same deity, and while it's unfortunate that we have lost so much, in my mind it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily exclude one or the other. Personally, I still view them as two separate goddesses. However, if you feel that they are not, then I will gladly agree to disagree with you and your personal conclusion, because, as I've said many times, there is no right or wrong way to believe something. And really, due to the differences between tribes thousands of years ago, there really never was a right or wrong way, because if you go 20 miles down the road, Gunnar might have a different way of believing, oh, well, the story I heard was this, because the person who passed down the story to him might have said it differently. It evolved because there really wasn't a written set of stories. It was all spoken. It was always a linguistic history passed down through people who remembered the stories. And things get changed. If you ever played that game of telephone as a child, there's always that one person who's got to change what somebody's saying, or it gets misheard, or somebody misinterprets something. You know, the word was supposed to be corn, and by the time it gets to the end, it's Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. How did it turn into that? We don't know. It's just one of those things. There's always something's gonna change, either because of misinterpretations, or differences in understanding, or somebody just changing a story, because that's just what they felt like doing. And really, so the stories that we have today are kind of an amalgamation of many different beliefs from various sources and eras. We don't know how X region specifically carried out their beliefs or told their stories. And I think the same is true today with every heathen having their own interpretation of these stories and gods, because you have people who are reconstructionists who want to follow as closely to what we know of ancient people and how they did things, and then you have people who just kind of want to interpret it the way that feels best to them, that makes sense in their mind. And that's one reason I really love paganism in every form, facet, and shape, is because there are so many ways to interpret things and to make them work for you, which is why I think it also draws a lot of people to it. Yes, there is no Norse Pope, and while it would be nice sometimes to have a, oh, this is what this is supposed to be, I mean, that would kind of also take the fun out of being able to research things yourself and make your own conclusions, which I think is something that the gods appreciate, is taking the time to learn things for yourself and draw your own conclusions and think for yourself. But really, I mean, it's up to you to draw your own conclusions about what you think and what you want to incorporate into your practices. So, as far as Freyja and Frigg being the same or different, I think, if I had to come up with my own conclusion, I would say that they were at one time probably the same deity, or they evolved from the same point, and they eventually branched off due to having very different personalities at times. I see Frigg as being very maternal, and Freyja is not so much maternal as she is just like a feminine powerhouse to an extent, whereas Frigga is more reserved and motherly. She's more matronly. It's really hard to describe, but you know, it's just that feeling. It's that mom feeling. Frigg has a mom feeling. Freyja doesn't really have a mom feeling. Freyja's that aunt that takes you out to buy beer for your 13th birthday. Okay, maybe not your 13th birthday. I guess maybe back in the day, I guess kids used to drink because water was disgusting, so a lot of people drank ale, but anyway, whatever, aside from that, I hope that you have found this video helpful and insightful, and that it has given you a decent foundation to help you draw your own conclusions and build your own thoughts about these two goddesses. So let me know in the comments what you think and what your ideas are, and if there are any other topics that you would like to see me go in depth on, Or if you want me to go in depth more on Freyja and Frigg. I think Loki wants me to make a video about him next because I've been tongue-tied this entire video. Probably because he's feeling left out, so I gotta give the trickster his due and do a video on him next. So, if you have learned something or you have liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button. If you want more content, hit the subscribe button, because there's always going to be more content because I have no social life. So, thank you all so much for watching, Gods be with you, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye. In the story, she is mentioned, and her strong maternal instincts and her strong maternal presence is especially highlighted. This is... I said especially too many times. Meanwhile, in Lifsholth, that's a... Words! Give heed now, Njord, and boast not too high. No longer I hold it hid. No. Can you read words, Nash? Freyja is read to... Why do I keep saying red? Oh my god.